things will only get worse from here. Night 3 introduces the big man himself, and unlike the other animatronics, Frederick's legs are locked up, so no need to worry about him wondering. What a load of bullshit. Tonight's page of the manual has something quite interesting on it. Text that says, remember, scrolled across it. Clearly these crazy bitches remember us, but from where exactly? This page reads a note to the FPA09 employees, and that this manual is a modified version of the standard Frederick's Pizza Manual, made to accommodate the non-traditional standards and practices of the FNJ02 location, which according to the wiki is another restaurant set in this universe. The one we currently work at is named FPA09. Anyway, so Frederick is coming to town, baby. When he moves off the show stage, he will appear in camera 10, which is the vent into your office. Oh yeah, there's a vent, by the way. I forgot to mention that. Oh my god, I'm a bad YouTuber. In my defense, it wasn't pertinent to your education yet, as it had no function, so you are on a need-to-know basis. Shut up. Frederick will move in 3 different stages. One, when he's just entered the vent. Another, when he's a little further up. And the last one is right before he drops down to your office. You'll hear a sound cue each time he moves, but unless you have super hearing, you'll probably miss it. To counter him, you have to use the lasers in the vent, which will cause him to scream and return home. I despise this guy. And this time, it's not even solely due to him being related to Piss Bear. While he may be super easy to deal with in the early nights, he ruined everything so many times throughout my playthrough. And although on night 3 he didn't give me much grief, later on I wanted to tie him up and throw him off a cliff like in Red Dead Redemption 2. Can you tell what I've been playing lately? He's sort of like Clara, where it can be easy to forget about him if you're distracted, and if you do, you'll regret it so very much. But until then, he isn't really a problem, so we'll come back to him then. Although I do want to point out that even on night 3, Frederick never really goes back to the show stage. He will appear there for a few seconds and then immediately dump back into the vent, so he is a constant issue. Now with night 3, I found myself slowly getting into a rhythm. And the mechanics were starting to rub off on me, which may sound obvious because these FNAF games always follow a pattern, same gameplay loop, but with harder and usually newer characters. But I still wanted to call attention to this nonetheless, because night 4 flushes it all down the drain. Night 4, for some reason, decides to just completely disable the power, for some archfic reason, and you have to stumble around in the dark. The guidebook page for this night reads, sometimes a birthday party may run late, and we have to dip into our emergency power reserves. When this happens, the building is placed on low power mode, and all of the non-essential functions are powered down. If the system detects you're using too much power, it'll lock up. I have no words. My jaw dropped when I read this. I was finally getting a handle on this game, and then it goes and just throws a bowling ball into my asshole. The second page is a note to the employees at the location we currently work at, stating that no attempt should be made to conduct repairs of the 05 series animatronics, as they appear to use a number of non-standard irreplaceable parts, aka human remains. Okay, so I'm guessing that these dudes are known as the 05 series animatronics. This is also backed up by the note written at the bottom of the page. Anyway, so if you were in case blind and couldn't tell, the power is out, leaving you to defend yourself solely with a flashlight. Don't worry though, because for some dumb reason, the cameras and lasers still work. It's just the lights. Surely in comparison to those two things, the amount of power the lights use is pretty inconsequential, right? Anyways, I was too focused on reading the note, and Clara immediately started to fire, which of course she did. And when I said the cameras were active, by the way, I mean barely active. You can't see a thing. You can just see the outlines with their eyes glowing. You can't even see how much power you have left. You just have to guess. I know for all my complaining so far, you'd think that I would have a problem with this, but in fact, I think this is pretty cool. This is such a smart way to switch up the game and add an extra layer of difficulty without actually changing anything. I mean, the core gameplay itself is still identical, but it's made so much harder by simply switching off the lights. I mean, the only way of seeing anything is with your tiny flashlight that follows your cursor. And because of this, a character that was basically a non-existent threat before now ruled over my ass cheeks. Bernard. He was my biggest goddamn problem this night. Okay, so like I said earlier, Bernard works like this. He moves from the show stage and slowly works his way to your office. When he arrives, he will grab onto the door frame, allowing you to see his hand, meaning it's time to zap him with the laser. However, in the dark, it's near impossible to see his hand. The only way is to make sure you check that specific spot every time before you flip up the cameras. The amount of times I missed his hand was ridiculous. Okay, so I know I just spent like the last minute rambling about Bernard, but my first death was actually to Frederick. But the rest were to Bernard, I still hate him. And I still hate Frederick. Basically, Frederick is the most effective when there is way too much going on and he ends up slipping your mind. At least with Clara, the game allows you to have a bit of a do-over with the sprinkler mechanic, although with the moisture debuff, whereas Frederick gets you one and done. He will drop down from the vent in the ceiling and play music because, of course he does. Sometimes he'll be in a good mood and play a song for a while longer, which only delays the inevitable, but still. This death to Frederick happened at 5 AM, and it was a while before I got that close again, but I digress. Bernard got me a few times, but as long as I made sure to check that specific spot, I was all good. Endoskeleton wasn't a problem at all this night, since their face lights up whenever it's at either door, making them quite easy to see in the dark. As you get towards the end of night 4, some of the cameras start shutting down because of course they do. I'm unsure as to what the cause was, but my current theory is maybe I used too much power and this was the result of the system beginning to lock me out, as it mentioned at the start of the night. Either that, or maybe that's just what happens this night to make it harder, I don't know. This is a huge problem for Frederick, because when his camera goes down, you can't tell where he is in the vent. And like I said earlier, it is very easy to miss his sound cues, so I ended up just zapping the vent periodically just to be safe, as it was 5 AM and I was not losing another 5 AM run to Frederick. Upon reaching 6 AM on night 4, you are greeted with this guy. Oh my god. Big scary blacked out Freddy guy roars and launches us to the back of the room, which I didn't even know it was this big. We are just sitting in a hallway this whole time. Now, unfortunately for us, instead of being granted a swift and merciful death, we get thrown back into a springlock suit that just happened to be sitting directly behind us. I mean, what are the chances? And of course we get springlocked, and are we purple, guy? We're purple, aren't we? I mean, the dude we play as is named Alan Fritter, which doesn't necessarily scream serial killer, so maybe not. The night ends with us getting springlocked and our hands splitting open. Night 5. Oh my god, this night was so damn difficult. And I know I'll probably get comments saying, oh, but it's not that hard. I mean, blah blah blah, beat it first try. I don't care. It took me like an hour to beat this, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot. The night starts with us waking up in the springlock suit because apparently we aren't dead, because of course not, it's FNAF. People get springlocked all the time and live, it's fine. Our now springlocked main character slowly makes his way back to the front of the office, and thus reveals the final boss of Five Nights at Frederick's. Golden Frederick. And then we literally punch him square in the face. Following this just insane turn of events, Golden Frederick teleports away. But before he does, he makes sure to turn on the radio, which just absolutely ties this whole night together. He will appear at either your left or your right door, much like Bernard and Endo. Luckily, it's easy as piss to tell when he's there, as not only does he laugh in your face, but his face also lights up at the door, so he's pretty easy to spot. His second way of attacking is to show up on a random camera, and to get rid of him, you must find which one he's in and stare until he leaves. Which, okay, at this point, this seems to be a requirement in order to make a FNAF fan game. Every game has at least one of these types of mechanics. Okay, I'll at least give some credit where credit is due. It's not just complete random bullshit with this one. Whenever Golden Frederick moves anywhere, you'll hear a little blip noise. When he's going to hide on a camera, the blip noise will play around 5 times, alternating between the left and right side of the establishment. Pay close attention, because whichever side of your headphones you hear the final blip noise in, Golden Frederick will only be on that side of the pizzeria. So if the blip noises play and you hear the final one play in the left side of your headphones, then you will only need to check the cameras on the left side. If you learn to focus on this mechanic, it makes dealing with his camera antics so much easier, as you can cut the amount of time you have to spend searching for him in half, as you'd only need to check one side. The main problem with this is the fact that there's music playing super loud during this night, and while it adds so much to the experience, it's a little hard to hear the sound cues. You really have to listen. And as you may have noticed by now, everyone else is active too. The game gives you until roughly 1 AM to learn Golden Frederick's mechanics before putting everyone else back onto the playing field, which, as much as I was screaming at this since good old gluten-free Rick is enough to deal with by himself, it's still pretty cool, I suppose. Plus, the others don't feel as aggressive as the previous night, so they still take a backseat to the main antagonist, which is good. Doesn't mean they don't cause problems though. Anyways, Golden Frederick's third method of attacking is appearing in the vents, much like Frederick the First. Basically, our good old pal here will laugh whenever he's either at the 2 doors or in the vent. So if you hear him laugh and you can't see him at the doors, then you know where he is. When in the vents, you counter him the same way you counter Frederick the First, and that's by using the vent lasers and zapping his ass back to hell. Now, Frederick's final way of attacking starts around 3 AM. He will appear in the office and stare at you. All you gotta do is just punch him in the face like before, and he will leave. And then the worst possible thing happens. At 4 AM, this evil bastard just turns off the lights, and we are back to Nightfall antics. I hate him, I hate him, I hate him. Well, not though, as to make up for this, he just spam appears in the office rather than hiding on the cameras, as it'd be next to impossible to find him in the dark, so thank you, game developer. And then, when 5 AM hits, I'm just gonna let it play out. This was really cool. The music, it's perfect. This is genuinely my favorite Night 5 ever in any FNAF game. This wins, it's perfect. The other characters that are stable during 5 AM, and it's a final showdown against Golden Frederick. He constantly spams his moves for the rest of the night, and the second you get rid of him, he will show up somewhere else. And I will be completely honest, this was like a billionth attempt, and because of that, I started shaking because I was so nervous of messing this up. You can see some of my reactions slow down a little bit towards the end, and this is because I actually kept missing the buttons. I was shaking. After one final punch to Golden Frederick's stupid face, the night ends, and our memory is now wiped. The game ends with us on the floor inside of the Springlock suit, with Golden Frederick standing over us. He laughs before teleporting away, but oh wait, we're still alive, of course we are. But thankfully, that nightmare is over. I'm sure glad there are no more super difficult nights ahead of us, and there's a night 6. Of course there's a night 6. Night 6 actually begins with another newspaper ad. This time they're actually looking for a security guard. Oh yeah, because we died. This time around we play as Ella Vanilla, a new night guard working at Frederick's. And as soon as you load in, you might notice a familiar face. It's us, or I guess the remains of Alan Fritter. Night 6 has all the normal characters join the fray once more, alongside Alan Fritter, or as he's now called, Fritterful, which is just such a cool name. On the desk sits a note from management that reads, the technicians are testing a new animatronic. It shouldn't activate during your shift, but if it does, hold down Snows until it shuts down. And of course it's active right away because of course it is. Fritterful activates in a couple different stages, indicated by how upright he is sitting. When he reaches his final stage, he will disable all electronics, making you completely defenseless. To counter Fritterful, you must hold his nose down to prevent him from progressing. Basically, his mechanic is the same as a music box from FNAF 2. Hold his nose down whenever you can. And can I just, this night was so hard. Endoskeleton and Frederick just ran a f***ing train on me. This is what I was talking about earlier, where Frederick just becomes a huge pain in the ass. Not only does he advance through the vents so quick, but his final movement before he drops into your office gives you such a limited time frame to zap him with the lasers. The amount of times I clicked on the camera to zap him just to see him smile at me before dropping into my office made me want to cry. And like I said earlier, he is just so easy to lose track of since it doesn't take much for everything to go wrong at once. I mean, I think this pretty much just sums up the Night 6 experience. Okay, now onto what was the real problem of this night. Endoskeleton, the character who I barely talked about at all because of how easy they were to get rid of. Unfortunately, they're now on crack. Majority of the time, their sound cue, the static, will play for under a second before it enters your office. So basically, if your cameras are up and Endoskeleton decides to show up, then you're dead. Also, I would like to revise what I said about Endoskelet's mechanics earlier, as I've actually learned they're a lot more in depth than what I previously said. Endoskeleton will not enter the office as long as your camera is down. However, if they do manage to enter, then you will see a flashing endo icon in the bottom left corner, indicating that they are now in the room. As far as I'm aware, this doesn't mean instant death. Basically, Endoskeleton will completely max out and drain your power over time. So if someone showed up at the door, then you would need to zap them, right? If Endoskeleton is in the room, then you can't or you die. It's just so funny that my biggest foe ended up being the character I overlooked the most during this game, and I think that's beautiful. Overall, Five Nights at Frederick's, in my opinion, is an absolute masterpiece. The character designs, the music, the art, it's all impeccable. And as of right now, this is my #1 favorite FNAF fan game, but it changes a lot to be fair. I think even though the difficulty jumps a lot between Night 4 to 5, it is still definitely very possible. And Golden Frederick's boss battle is easily my favorite part of the entire game. His design is incredible and it's just so cool. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Per usual, if you have any game suggestions you want me to check out, then leave them in the comments below. And yeah, have a lovely day. the tree, like the color scheme, the red on white. I think that's a really good combination of colors thematically. I don't know why. It just looks nice. Same sort of. Hi. Great. People out there drinking and driving with a bunch of dummies. Of course, it's next to a public park. I wouldn't be surprised if someone crashed their car. Yeah. Fair enough. Not my problem. Nice. Why is my tire? Interesting. Interesting. I will say though, I feel like if you're gonna be doing this a lot, you should invest in something like a dolly, day 2, or as a community. Trees use their roots to warn each other of potential dangers. Send nutrients to the trees in need and to those that can fight back the threat. Sap becomes dense, overflowing with resources. That's how we do it. I mean, the ground seems mostly flat here. I feel like a dolly or something along those lines, a little cart, would be most beneficial. Make it a little easier on my lumberjack belly, you know? It's the only tree I knew about. There must be some more. I just need to find a different route. But if I break that rope, no one will notice. No, it's a broken rope. A second rope? That's risky. No, that's risky. This is oddly satisfying. You're a lumberjack, alright? You just love cutting stuff. Third rope? My guy is insane. The search for these blood diamonds in the forest has led my person places you shouldn't go. Oh, what the hell? Does this sap taste like blood? I mean, really? Both of y'all know. What if be silly? They warned me about this, but I think it would be so real. Alright, last chunk of the day. My shirt is ruined. I look like a serial killer. Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, you kind of knew what you were getting into. Blood diamonds in the forest, bleeding tree, come on. Definitely wouldn't go around wearing a best shirt for this. But I'm no lumberjack. Saying a cart, or ollie, or I mean just anything, a little push wagon. I'm just saying, dude, could help. To think this wood is worth so much. Why? Because it is red? Or is it you're the ones that have to go fetch it? Oh. They're living in a cabin in the woods. Now is not the time to be philosophical. Philosophical? Oh gosh, I can't even talk right now. Philosophical? Ah. It's hard to understand the rich. Listen, rare means pricey. Okay, doesn't even matter if it's good, honestly. These trees just get bloodier. I'm sure it's fine. Time for a nice little nap. Day 3. Some trees fall, some trees stand. Some plants are able to evolve during their lifetime. They change their characteristics, shaping themselves, depending on their surroundings. They knew the sound of my axe. Huh. Can't be good, right? What's people doing here? Have they been filming while I slept? I should go and tell them a few things. The lumberjack they hired? Yes, I am. You were the creeps who were filming my cabin while I slept. Can you go away now? Tell me, are you aware of the danger surrounding the blood-bark trees which you have been hired to chop down? Yes, I have been warned of the threat these trees suppose. Cognitive effects, which as you may know, include visual and auditive illusions, leading those who fell the trees to believe they are killing a man instead of a tree. Some experts believe this is a survival mechanism this exotic species have developed to survive deforestation. What do you think about this? Trees are smart, but not that smart. It's not like they understand why we chop them down. And if you do know the effects of these trees, what made you accept this job? They pay a lot, and there's not many places a lumberjack who can't use machinery to work with a living wage. If I start seeing things, I'll just know it's the trees. If I remember what they do, their tricks won't work on me. That's an interesting philosophy. Thanks for allowing us to ask you these questions. Have a nice day. Okay, Craig, that's enough. Cut. So are you leaving now? No, asshole. You almost ruined our footage. We'll film more trees as background footage, and then we'll leave. Keep on rolling, Craig. You know, I was just about to say this was not realistic at all. A reporter being incredibly nice. Yeah. No, that's fair. I was happy. There must be more blood-bark trees on yesterday's path. So I'm an old-fashioned lumberjack who refuses to use machinery. It's rough out here. Oh, creaking ominously at me. What the heck? It's rude. Oh, skunk. I don't regret anything. So yeah, another tree. It looks so human. They're getting better. It's just the trees. I don't know if that was a true, I'm gonna be honest. Their lies are each time more believable. Felt extremely real. It might be because, perhaps it was. Alright, relax, you're getting paranoid. It's just the trees. It's just the trees. I don't know. Unless the trees have gotten really good. They're tagging walls now to seem human. That's crazy. But I am no treeologist, so, you know, who knows? I am wondering if, like, the tagger was with the people in the car and just left his ass after I went all crazy slasher hitting their vehicle with the axe. Or just a random guy, or maybe I'm not crazy, and it was just a tree. No, it's probably just a tree. See, you need to get added. Day 6. Red upon red. In my eyes, it's just bodies piling up. How was I supposed to tell the difference? I mean, yeah, fair. I'm just curious as to whether or not it would. Oh, oh no. Trees. They were all trees. I didn't kill anyone. I don't want to drown in blood. Day 7. They reshape my brain, my inner workings. Can a plant take away your humanity? I was lost in that forest. But then you found me. It reminds me of the one SCP about the trees that were actually legs of something. It's been so long since I read any of those, I can't remember which one it is, but it was pretty good if I remember correctly. Yesterday, it was horrible. I need a wall. If someone happens to remember, please let me know. I think it was like they went through a portal of some sort and was scoping out the area, and they saw the trees and were confused about them. Oh man, this is gonna eat away at me until I figure it out. Not much blood bark trees over here. It's sneak out of the park. There might be some outside. Sir, there are people outside. It's probably not a good idea. Blood bark forest, stay away. Detour, detour. Park is empty. Only the trees are watching. Are people scared of them? Are they scared of me? Shut up, shut up. Get out of my head. Playtime with Percy is one of those FNAF fan games that, hold on, isn't a FNAF fan game at all, and I mean that in the best possible way. I would put this game in the same sort of category as maybe the Walton Files. Clearly FNAF inspired, but it very easily stands on its own 2 feet. For quite some time now, I've been seeing this game pop up here and there with everyone talking about just how good it is. While the majority call it a masterpiece, some say it's very difficult and frustrating, even going as far as calling it overrated. Okay, like one guy said that, but I feel like an ooh, let's find out sort of thing for the video. You get it. With a charming art style and quite a large roster of characters to boot, this game easily exceeds any and all expectations that you might have for it. But did that one stray Redditor have a point? Is this game too difficult, or were they simply salty? I guess we'll find out. The answer's no. By the way, it's hard to, grow up. This sophisticated gentleman is Nick Nicholson, our protagonist and the man we will be playing as throughout our time here at Percy's. Nick is enjoying a nice cold beer when suddenly he gets a phone call from his former boss, John Johnson. John Johnson is calling to offer Nick a temporary position back at Percy's Playhouse, as he used to be a technician for them before he was laid off. However, it's revealed that ever since Nick was laid off, the business started going downhill, and now it's due to be shut down and soon demolished. John wants Nick to watch over Percy's during its final week, to ensure that no one breaks in to steal things, as John is planning on auctioning off several items, including the characters. Nick, understandably confused as to why he was the one being asked to do this, asks what's in it for him. Fair question. And all it took was the promise of $250 and a gift basket to get Nick fully on board. How hard could it be? Nick says. Right off the bat, this game does something that's quite unique amongst FNAF-type games, and that is give a fully detailed explanation before we start the night with an optional tutorial. But before that, let's talk about the office. You've got a window in the front and a door on your right. You also have 2 vents either side of the room, and your equipment sat in a box opposite you. And in my opinion, the way they've designed this room is really cool. It actually gives off the vibes that this is somewhere children would come to have fun, as opposed to what we can usually come to expect in this genre. I feel like when it comes to Five Nights at Freddy's, in my opinion, a lot of the time it just feels like a regular-ass pizza restaurant, especially the FNAF 1 location. What kind of 9-year-old wants to hang out at Freddy's? There's like some tables and there's some chairs. Oh, go on, child that I hate. Go sit there and play with the party hats. Point is, I just think Percy's feels a lot more child-friendly. The colors are more vibrant, and there looks to be a lot more to do. I would love to have spent my school holidays at Percy's. Freddy's, not so much. Also, because you'll probably get killed at Freddy's, which does bring its score down a little bit. Once you pick up your equipment from the box, you are greeted with the Pal Percy as well as the Pal Boy. These will be your best friends when it comes to this game, one in a slightly more literal way, but we'll get into that later. The night system in Playtime with Percy works a little differently to your typical FNAF type game. Usually you have to sit and survive from 12 to 6 AM, but here, instead, the night will conclude once your Pal Percy's happiness has reached a specific target. In this case, it's 30. To fill the Pal Percy's happiness bar, you must complete one of 3 minigames at random. This includes feeding him, quenching his thirst, or playing a game of catch. However, if you neglect the Pal Percy for too long, it'll start beeping and flashing red, meaning it's cranky. To rectify this, complete another minigame and it'll calm down. If it's angry for too long, nothing good will come from it, so don't do that. Now, moving on to the Pal Boy, aka our camera tablet. Not much to say about this for now. Camera system with cameras, you get it. However, this next part of the tutorial is my absolute favorite. The game introduces us to the first 2 characters, Charlie Cat and Mother Moose. But the way the game introduces them and explains how they work is really cool. Basically, a dummy sign with the character's face on it will show up from either side, along with the game prompting us with what we need to do to counter said character. For Charlie Cat, the objective reads to keep a tool down, which means if Charlie Cat enters the room, we have to stare directly at them and not be distracted by the Pal Percy, or the Pal Boy. The second character, Mother Moose, is the opposite, and you have to keep a tool up and pretend to be distracted when she enters. They will randomize which vent they come from each time, as you can see here with Charlie Cat entering from the right this time. But I absolutely adore this tutorial section. Even the cute little placeholders they use for Charlie Cat and Mother Moose to help you get used to the mechanics. But that's pretty much it for tonight's tutorial. After that, the night has officially begun. It was fairly quiet because, again, it's the first night, but I found the best strategy with this game was to just completely speedrun the Pal Percy's mini games. As like I said earlier, the night ends once the happiness meter is at the designated target rather than a time clock run out thing. I, however, wasn't aware of doing them that quick because I was very paranoid. I didn't know if the vent characters made noises or anything before entering, so I was just looking left and right and left and right. But then my Pal Percy started yelling at me, so I had to catch some bones or something. Suddenly, I heard a vent noise coming from the left. Someone was coming, but I didn't know who or when. Turns out this will be the first sound cue that plays when someone has entered the vent, and it indicates that while they are on the way, they aren't necessarily a threat just yet. Again, I assumed the worst and just kept looking from vent to vent, waiting for someone to pop out. Then boom, Mother Moose makes her first entrance. In case you can't remember, for Mother Moose, you must act busy by using the Pal Percy or the Pal Boy. I panicked and put down the Pal Percy and pulled up the Pal Boy, even though they both would have worked, but whatever. I promise I get better at this game. Speaking of the Pal Boy, it is useless for the first couple nights. There is no need to use it until a character that comes later forces you to use it. The second time around was Charlie Cat, and if you remember, he loves eye contact for some reason. Although I don't think you actually have to look at him, you just have to ensure that you aren't preoccupied by the Pal Boy or Pal Percy. And that does it for night 1, or I guess Monday. But wait, it's time for a bonus round. This fun little post-night minigame has us listing the animatronics up for auction. The aim of this minigame is to find an offer that matches the asking price for each animatronic. You cycle through the offers by rejecting the current one. For some reason, however, every time you reject an offer, you must input a randomized number into the keypad, and if you mess up, this